Today we discuss presidential politics, the wall, and more on the Green New Deal. This is Matt Field, and this is Ditch Your Political Party Podcast. We have plenty to cover over the week. There were a lot of things that were originally reported that were misreported and have slowly been corrected in time. There are some of the mainstream media that have corrected it, others have not. But we're going to start first off on the wall. That's kind of the forefront of my mind, probably the forefront of many people's mind, particularly since the president is likely going to sign a bill today that will fund the government through the end of September. Now, what is actually on what's on the bill and what does it consist of is nothing what President Trump originally had intended. So to give you a little bit of an idea, he originally requested $25 billion for the deal. He himself negotiated himself down to $5 billion, and now he's going to get around a little over $1 billion. So, I mean, he's the art of the deal, right? So what's the issue? What's happening here? Why isn't he able to negotiate a deal that is actually going to benefit his effort to build a wall and to prevent illegal immigration? And look, I've mentioned this, I've talked about the wall and its logical benefit to pretty much anybody. If it's applied in the extreme, anyone that has a house and they put a fence up around it, it's to protect their loved ones inside. You don't want anybody just jumping the fence or just walking on your lawn and having a picnic or whatever it may be. It's your land, it's your thing. So it's yours. You want to use it as you intend. So the wall itself isn't immoral. But it's by way of immigration. I think it shouldn't be all that difficult to immigrate unless there is some sort of risk associated with that process of immigration. This border bill is quite disgusting, honestly, when it comes to the overall idea of illegal immigration. Now, it's one thing to illegally immigrate. Okay, that's kind of that's more of a minor offense, I would say, in my eyes. But when you are an illegal immigrant and you're a criminal, and this is allowed, this bill actually provides provisions for people that are in that scenario to essentially be caught and released. And what it is some people have called it the MS-13 bill. MS-13, those who are unaware, is a very violent gang that participates with the cartels and other things, other organizations. And essentially, in the bill that President Trump will likely sign today, it's a 14-page bill, 1,400-page bill, which is ridiculous. But they may not arrest anybody who has a minor, who potentially could have a minor, or potentially could house a minor. So pretty much anybody. You can make that claim for anybody and provide any lousy bit of information or evidence that could be the case, and they'd let you go. And he's about to sign it. So I find this very odd that the president's actually considering this. And honestly, it's probably just because of the fact that people are sick of the idea of the shutdown. Again, I don't think there's any issue with the shutdown. Okay? If it were me, I've thought about this. If it were me and our president going into it, I'd have a little bit more of a warning if I knew this is how it was going to happen. But hindsight, of course. But I'd say, buckle up. We already know there's going to be issue with the airports, a lot of the TSA folks. So talk to the states that have those issues and say, hey, get ready. We're doing it. Cinch up your belt. We're actually going to have to start doing things a little inordinately, because this is what has to happen in order for us to get the funding we need to accomplish the things we need to shake up Washington. Honestly, in my opinion, it's not just the wall. It's the idea of taking charge of what's happening in Washington. Because, we can go up and down the list, but if you look at a 1,400-page bill that was just presented, how on earth are you going to read 14 pages of a bill? Okay, it's not like it's a page turner. And this isn't what the founders intended. They put so much garbage in those things that it forces the president within the given time to either sign it or repeal it. And the issue with that is that if they repeal it, then it says, oh, it has all this great stuff in it. If he approves it, then it has all this other garbage that's in it. So it's a lose-lose situation no matter what, regardless of who's actually presenting it. So really stupid, really dumb idea that this is actually going to happen, that Trump is going to allow this to happen. It's clear that he's not the negotiator he, pretends to be, because he clearly isn't. Not to mention he has a rally on the border just a few days ago where he goes after AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, he goes after Beto O'Rourke, he goes after Ralph Northam, he goes after a bunch of different things, which was quite entertaining and comical. But to what end? Essentially, at this point, I think the only reason Trump went out there to do this rally, where he had 20,000, maybe 30,000 plus people there, was to get ready for the upcoming election. He's getting ready for his election. But what has he actually accomplished? Zero. In regards to the wall, what he's done is zero. He's getting less than what the Democrats originally intended, or what they originally proposed. He could have gotten more wall. He could have gotten more with it than anything else. And the suggestion is, the idea is that Trump is going to try and do some sort of emergency powers move where he's going to be able to reallocate some funds in order to do what he wants to do. If he does that, then he could find himself in some legal trouble, and this new bit deal, if he signs it, could actually prevent him from doing that anyway. It's the way that they've structured it. I'm not a legal guy, but I would just if you read up on it, there are a lot of things that are on other sources, but it essentially suggests that if he does that, it's going to limit his ability to actually utilize any emergency powers. And I mean, if he did emergency powers or not, essentially what this rally on the border accomplished nothing. All it's doing is he's just politically pandering, which is so obnoxious. When anybody's going out to do that, it just drives them up the wall, because it's not a logical move forward. If you're just tearing down your opponents, to what end does that benefit the American people? All it does is it changes the perception of different people and manipulates that perception, whether or not that perception is true. So, not like I've never been a big fan of Trump. And those of you that are just listening, I'm unaffiliated. I have no party. Basically, I am the party of logic. That's about what I can nail it down to. So I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, constitutionalist, libertarian, whatever you are. I don't care. Essentially, my policies must follow logic. And for some reason, that is rejected right now. And that's why this is called Ditch Your Political Podcast, because we Ditch Your Political Party podcast, because we don't want you to have a party. We don't want you to listen, have those little guys on your shoulders always talking to you, telling you what to do. These party angels, that are forcing you or influencing you in one way or another to do something that essentially, if you sat down and thought about it and developed your own opinion about it, you wouldn't be in favor for. It's the mob mentality that seems to take over in America when we talk about politics. And the Democrats, Republicans, it doesn't matter what party you are, they try to employ them as much as they can. And it's wrong. It's not right. So stop doing that. Stop looking at what letter follows the name of a politician and begin to think for yourself. This deal that is being proposed to Trump is garbage. It should not be signed. He should let the government shut down again, and he should hold him to it. That he should not move forward. He should not stop that from moving, or he should not sign until he has something that's actually doable. But I would build a plan. They have so many staffers there. If they're able to review a 1,400-page document within a day, they've got to have pretty good help. So develop a plan for every single airport that isn't privately run, and say, hey, this is what needs to happen. Get ready, because this is what you need to do, and make it happen. Because the current bill as it stands right now is garbage, and it shouldn't be signed. Anyway, so that's the whole idea. What's happening with The wall, if you were a big advocate for the wall, you're not getting it. There is no wall that's really coming. He's not going to be able to really build it. If he does, he's going to find himself in legal trouble, and it's just going to give more fuel to the other parties and those that hate him to try and debunk him and to get him out of office. And I don't think there's any way of actually really impeaching him, even though there has been suggestions that they're trying to use the 25th Amendment to get rid of him, which isn't a serious thing. The 25th Amendment is removing the president because of mental issues, right? Which, first off, is absurd. Yeah, Trump has some weird ideas, as does many politicians, but he's not insane. He certainly isn't insane. So I think anybody that would logically review that idea or concept would agree with that assessment. So he's not going to be forcibly removed from office. There's nothing that's going to come of the Mueller investigation. Nothing has happened, as I've mentioned many times already. So the only thing people are doing right now, Trump and all the other presidential candidates, they're just trying to win someone's vote, and they'll say anything and everything to make you feel like you're on the right side. But as you review these candidates, the review should consist of what is their history, what have they accomplished, and how do you believe that's going to move forward. Now, Trump's done some good stuff. He definitely has done some good things, especially on the judicial side, where they've had unbiased type judges go in and review the law to the T, as opposed to leaning one way or the other. He's also had some successes in taxes with regulations. He's removed those things that prevent people from working effectively. And as we've seen, a lot of businesses have reinvested. The market's been going crazy. I mean, these are logical results to logical plans. Now, he's done a lot of stupid things too, and this bill is a complete representation of that. I mean, this is worse than him just running his mouth, if you ask me. If this is what he's going to sign, then it's a complete failure. And the funny thing is, though, that even with the fact that this is a garbage bill, he is still going to get he's getting better approval than he has in the past. Because sometimes we as people are so short-sighted that we're so concerned about what is happening in our lives, we can't see the big picture. And when we can't see the big picture, we are convinced that, hey, if he's not going to put us back into the shutdown, then I'm going to be okay with that because I'm sick of the shutdown. And sometimes people don't even know why they're sick of the shutdown. Because, as I've mentioned, I didn't feel their shutdown one iota. And I would say a good chunk of the United States didn't feel the shutdown at all. You know, unless you're employed by the government, or I'm not really in, or maybe going to the airport. That was probably the only other two times when you probably were feeling the shutdown. But outside that, the shutdown had no effect on our lives, and if anything, it probably helped us a little bit. So now we're going to get on to some presidential politics. I'm usually really excited for presidential politics, but unfortunately, the presidential politics side of things has been a little dumb because of all the pandering. Not a fan of the pandering, hate the pandering. I'm interested in logical ideas that are going to move us forward and solve these issues that are clearly before us. But before I do that, are you a business owner? Do you have inventory or products or components or ingredients that you no longer need? Are you dying to liquidate that inventory? So you have some cash you need to invest more effectively in your business? Is it to the point where you may have to shut your doors? If you are battling with surplus or excess inventory, use ExcessSupplyList.com. They put the balance back in your favor. Excess Supply List is where you list any of your excess inventory, and you can list it all for free. It can be anything. There are so many different things that could be excess in your business, and if you aren't using it, get your cash out of it by listing it to ExcessSupplyList.com. Go to ExcessSupplyList.com, click on Publish your ad for free, and get it done. You literally have nothing to lose, so go to ExcessSupplyList.com, list your excess or surplus supply, and get cash back in your pocket. ExcessSupplyList.com. Again, that is ExcessSupplyList.com. So now we are on to our presidential politics. There have been a few other people that have come into the race, and honestly, they're continuing to pile on. And so I'm not really going to report that entirely right now because there isn't really all that much to report. I reported some of them the other last week, I believe, or the week before, and talked about all the different people that were currently in the race and those that were speculated to get into the race. Now, I don't know if it's so early in the race. I believe, honestly, they're going to start having some. That once they announce the first debate, you're going to have everybody else that was going to get in. So we're going to kind of wait till that time to determine when we're actually going to start talking more fully on who is entirely in the race. But as it sits right now, we're going to talk about who's been involved and who's kind of been putting their foot in their mouth. So again, our evaluation is totally logical. We're trying to avoid the pandering as much as possible so that you can make that distinguishment. So we're going to start with Kamala Harris. She is kind of looked upon as the front runner for reasons I don't understand, outside the typical political reasons, and you can make that assessment yourself. So she currently was advocating for the legalization of weed, of pot, and so first off, the legalization of drugs, if you look at it from the libertarian side of things, it does actually work very logically in my brain. So when you legalize something, you have the ability to control it and to tax it. And there are two sides of this that I have some problems with. So first, the issue is now in our society that if something is legal, it is considered moral. It's okay to do. The morality of something and the legality of something don't equate to morality. I talked about the idea of legally and lawfully. A lot of times when they talk about that, that's something that happens in marriage sometimes. And when they talk about legally is a term that's for the law of the land, right? But lawfully is the higher law. It's God's law. And God governs morality. Now, if you don't believe in God, that's your prerogative. But there is a sense of morality that still exists, and whatever it is that you hail to, there is that lawfully aspect that must dictate what is moral and what is not. And we've kind of helped develop these different things that are logical morality, that when you apply certain principles, you can help determine if it is legal, or not legal, but rather moral. And I'm just going to go over those really fast. So to determine something is logical and moral, is they all have to pass the test. So the first one is it sustainable? Everyone loves the idea of sustainability. Is it actually sustainable? If you apply any principle in the extreme, is it sustainable? When it is applied in the extreme, what is the result? And then who does it benefit? It can't be one party or individual, nor at the expense of another. So here's the issue that I have with the legalization of basically of any drug. So the idea of legalization works logically in the brain. Is it sustainable? I think that's probably the best thing. That's probably the one that it does pass. That makes it logical, because when you are able to, it's more sustainable in the sense that economically and legally and all that sort of thing. You won't have your cartels, you won't have any of these things happening because it's legal. It's legal, man. You don't need to get pot from some shady guy in the alley, because it's legal. You can go to a pharmacy and pick it up. Like, why would you go meet with some random weirdo? So that is obviously a big benefit of that, and since it's out in the open, it gives you the ability to tax it. And so the only way that I would consider that this could be a moral argument is that if that tax was then applied directly to the advertising or the awareness of the effects of said drug. So for example, pot, right? Pot, I mean, it's pretty much getting legal everywhere anyway. I live in Utah, and it's basically legal here. I mean, different aspects of it are legal. So now we're California, right? The early California, back when California would write your prescription and you could use it. Here in Utah, that's kind of where we're at right now. But it basically, every state in the nation is going to get pretty close to that legalization, so it's kind of odd that she's talking about it. But this brings up the discussion of legalization of drugs anyway. So that legalization concept, if you were to apply the taxes you were able to bring in from that drug, and honestly they couldn't be too high, because then you would cause the same issue of people deciding to peddle it on the street again. So you want to avoid that. So, but if you tax it optimally, then you could use that tax to make the awareness and say, hey, this is a gateway drug. There are plenty of studies that affirm that it is extremely addictive. It can destroy different levels of your family life, just all these different things that are statistically proven that could be done. However, my biggest holdup on it is that the difference, people do not understand the difference between legally and lawfully. If they understood that, then maybe it would make more sense, but it doesn't make sense. People look at when the law is the law, then you can do as you please, even though it is not moral. Okay, there are a lot of things that are, there are a lot of, so for example, you can cheat on your spouse, and that's not technically illegal. In some states it probably still is on the books, but there's too much precedent now that people have been able to get away with it. And in fact, there are companies that have constructed their business around the idea of having an affair. So it's not illegal, but it's certainly not moral. But the problem is people don't see that. They see, hey, it's legal, so now it's also moral. And so the thing that when you apply it in the extreme, this is where the morality is completely dissipates on the idea of legalizing any drug, is when you apply it in the extreme. So if everyone decided to start smoking weed, or everyone decided to start doing heroin, what would be the result? It would be terrible, obviously. I mean, the amount of productivity would go down significantly. People would be experiencing serious psychological issues, and basically the country would tear themselves apart. And then who would benefit from it? Basically, no one benefits from the use of drug. Okay, nobody does. Nobody around you, and not when you're taking it. Now, obviously, drugs can be used with the skill of an MD or OD or whatever. People that are qualified to use these drugs can use them effectively. Most drugs, anyway. Some of them are so whacked out they have no real practical application. But so anyway, Kamala Harris is advocating for the legalization of weed. First off, kind of a dumb thing to talk about anyway, because every state is starting to do it because the public wants it. The public's voting it in. I don't understand why, but basically it's the mob mentality. You got some other people doing it, more and more people doing it. Hey, we need to do it too. Okay, so what's going to be next on the list? After pot's done, what's next? Right? Heroin? And everyone going to be okay with heroin? But that's the way we're going. I mean, if you deny that, then you're just living in la la land, because that's the next thing that's going to happen. Anyway, she goes into this. They're asking her questions about it. They said, "Have you smoked pot?" And she said, "Yes, I smoked pot." And they go through this process. And the interesting thing about it is she talks about that she was listening. The weird thing is she said she was certain she was listening to Tupac and Snoop Dogg, right? When she was in college. This is when she was in college. The problem is those albums didn't come out till 91 and 93, and she graduated in 86. Okay, so she's lying no matter what. Either she's lying about the music she was listening to while she was in college, or she's lying about the fact that she was taking, and some would say, well, that doesn't really even matter. Well, the answer is why would she lie about it? Why would that be something you'd lie about? If you're talking about smoking pot, you've already kind of committed the first offense, right? Admitting you smoked pot when it was illegal. And so when she was smoking pot, that really is the offense. But then she goes to the point. Then she builds onto it and says, I was doing this, this, and this. Why would you fabricate something like that? So essentially she lied. And if she was doing it during the time of Tupac and Snoop Dogg, when their albums came out, she was currently functioning as an assistant DA. Okay, so one of the assistant DAs of California was smoking pot, which maybe that's probably pretty common. But the idea is that if she's fabricating this concept or she's doing these different things and she's either just trying to appease the crowd, she's pandering, clearly she's either pandering or she's an habitual liar. So this makes me really nervous. I haven't been a big fan of Kamala Harris anyway. As I mentioned, the crime while she was Attorney General went up. She advocated for when the population wanted, when the people, this is a government by the people, when the government by the people were trying to uphold traditional marriage, she didn't care. She still advocated for her own agenda. So anyway, it's a lot of weird things. The only thing that that's a little more telling about Kamala Harris is in the interview that they were talking about this. They talked about how she married a white man. Now we don't talk about race on the program because we don't want to distinguish one another as that way. But if you're asking questions like that, why would somebody marry a white man? Then it's a completely idiotic question, and you need to pull your head out of the sand. Okay? Because you have to begin to look at people as people, and you don't need to distinguish them as one thing or the other. We all have our own abilities, we have our own predispositions, we have our own challenges, and it's our opportunity to overcome each of these things that comes our way and become successful in life. And if we decide to lean on somebody because of our race or because of our gender or because of our whatever, then we instantly are creating a crutch for ourselves. And you're not doing yourselves any favor, or no politician's doing themselves any favor if they do that. Anyway, we get, and the other weird thing is Cory Booker, who is also running for president. He was given some resistance when he mentioned that we need to have some grace. We need to give people the benefit of the doubt. That if it appears as though that they just tripped up on being racist, I think he may have been referring to Ralph Northam, who had he did something that looks racist, but he himself is not a racist. Is my conclusion, logical conclusion, because his entire life he's been working in the inner city and helping people of a different race than his. So it's odd that as soon as somebody like Cory Booker, who is right in line with what the Democratic Party wants to see, gets put down for suggesting we should have grace and be willing to forgive, that's a bad thing. That is so weird to me. And and sometimes I don't entirely understand it, because the parties are being torn apart because they're going so far one direction. I don't know how they're going to be able to recover, and at what point people begin to say, this is stupid. Why am I still associated with this party? Because when you look way back, if you go back to the 1950s and you look at the JFKs and you look at all these different earlier presidents than now, the difference between the two was actually pretty not that far apart. The ideology was not that far apart, and for some reason, as time has gone on, we've become more and more extreme. People say progressive now. No. So progressive, Abe Lincoln was progressive. Okay, he was of the Republican Party. Okay, and most people do not describe the Republican Party as progressive. Progressive is the effort to move forward, to make those things that were wrong right, and making those moves. It's not a perceived injustice, it's an actual injustice, which was obviously clear during Lincoln's time and during other people's times. And so this whole process of the parties moving so far one direction is completely destructive. And before too long, people are just going to start peeling off, or they're just going to be mindless drones that follow along. And I suggest you don't be a mindless drone. So I'm going to jump. I have just a little bit more here to talk about the Green New Deal, and then and maybe one more thing. But before that, do any of you suffer from inflammation? Or do you follow any particular diet, like the paleo, or the keto, or the AIP, or the SCD diet? Have you tried to use medication to overcome these different things? Well, these different types of diets allow you to actually help you holistically heal. And where do you start? How do you begin that holistic healing? Well, there's a company called Primal Health and Nutrition. And Primal Health and Nutrition started when a sister educated a brother, and a brother helped a sister. Their line of 100% compliant paleo, keto, specific carbohydrate, and autoimmune protocol proteins are #1 on the market. They're the cleanest option available and taste great. So go to primalhn.com, use promo code DYPP, that is Ditch Your Political Party, DYPP at checkout, and get 20% off your entire order. If you are tired of the conventional way of healing, let Primal Health and Nutrition help you along in a holistic way. Go to primalhn.com and use DYPP at checkout. Again, primalhn.com, and make sure you use the checkout code, promo code DYPP for 20% off your entire order. So I just want to address a couple of different things here about the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal was touted as something amazing, and we reviewed over it last time. The Green New Deal is another garbage bill. It's not a bill yet, but it's a proposal essentially that was posted on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez website. And the funny thing is, all these big heavyweights started to endorse it, saying, "Hey, this is a good idea. This is a good idea. It's a good idea." And then she comes out with the plan. And some people are still kind of backing it a little bit. I mean, the only person that kind of patted it down initially was Nancy Pelosi, but even then, she kind of felt the pressure to prop it up a little bit. And so now everyone is going along with this crazy deal where we employ people who aren't interested in actually working, or not, I guess not employ them, but give them money. And it's funny because there was some people that went out there and they were interviewing these college kids, and they said, "What do you think about the Green New Deal?" And they said, "Well, I think it's good that we take control of our carbon. We take control of the carbon energy sources, and we try to eliminate them. And we just try to eliminate the global warming concept overall." And as I've mentioned, there is global warming, and as anyone that even politically motivated, they can still, and there are scientists, they could say there is some global warming, but to the degree that is being suggested in this bill is ludicrous. Okay, global warming is in the period of the next 100 years, we might have a foot or two of ocean level rise. It's not a fast growing thing. It's basically like saying there's cold molasses on its way down the hill to the city. Everyone run and hide, leave your home, don't do anything. And the idea is just so ridiculous that, if there was cold molasses on its way and you look up, it's not moving very fast at all. And granted, you could put it off, but it's eventually going to be at your doorstep and you have to deal with it somehow. But when that's 100 years away and things could turn the tide pretty quickly, I'm not entirely convinced that it's certainly not entirely human based. But anyway, back to the Green New Deal. So they're talking to college kids and they say, "Hey, this is the deal," and they plan to do this, get rid of the carbon gases in the next 10 years. And the college kids are like, "Oh, well, I don't know if that's possible. I don't think that's a good idea." And they said also they want to employ people they want to give people money, and they want to give people jobs, and they want to give them all these different things. And they asked the question that I love to ask: how are they going to pay for that? Perfect. So I have hope. I have hope for the rising generation. Those college kids, they have a head on their shoulders. The problem is the issue with the entire thing is they were instantly endorsed the Green New Deal before they had even read it. When they started to hear the facts about it, they realized, hey, this is really dumb, as do the majority of the people out there. And Mitch McConnell kind of pulled a funny power move recently, and he said, "Hey, you want the Green New Deal? Let's vote on it. We'll take it to the Senate floor and we'll vote on it." And everyone's trying to get rid of that, disperse disperse the idea of that even happening, because if that were, they'd have to actually show where they stand, and the answer to that is nobody stands with the Green New Deal because it's stupid. And if you did stand with the Green New Deal, the ability that politicians have, Republican, Independent, basically the only ones that are in Democrat, the only ones that are actually in office right now, they apparently can't do math anyway, because if you look at the national debt, as I've mentioned multiple times on this program, they can't seem to prevent themselves from spending much more than they actually bring in, which no one in their right mind individually would do, but they would on the mass. So again, this is applying it in the extreme. If everyone's doing it, if the government is doing it, it's going to collapse. There's no way that it can be sustained. It has to be sustainable in order for it to last. So the Green New Deal still has some political cachet, but everyone with the right mind, Bill Gates, who would typically support the Democratic Party, when they talked to them, he was talked to about the Green New Deal, he said it was a dumb idea. And I mean, with a guy who's been very productive in his ability to make money through the years, I mean, that's got to tell you something. So before you decide to go out and endorse the Green New Deal, go read it first. Okay? It's pretty ridiculous. And have a good laugh, on the expense of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Of course, that would not be moral, because that would be the expense of her. Anyways, so we have that. I just want to do one last thing before I go, and it's just something that just is bugging me a little bit. And I didn't originally report on it the last couple of weeks because it wasn't a story. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was one of those defuse the bomb type stories, and it is. It's basically, there's a guy named Jesse Smollett, and he is an actor on the program Empire. I've never watched it before. I don't really watch that much TV. I don't watch current TV, let's put it that way. I kind of like to watch the reruns. Thank you very much. Anyway, so Jesse Smollett, he recently had brought up the claim that he was just walking down the streets of Chicago, and these guys attacked him, threw acid on him, and they said that you're in MAGA country, referring to the Make America Great hat again. You're in MAGA country. They put a noose around his neck, and then of course he eventually called the cops. The problem is I didn't originally report on it because I didn't even understand two things. One, the evidence didn't add up, and two, I didn't understand the motive. Okay, why would somebody first off, I mean, he's just a character on a television show. What would be his motivation to do something like this, to lie about it? Did he just want some attention, or did this actually happen? And so I was wondering where it was, but there were too many holes. So essentially what happened is there are so many cameras in Chicago, so if you look at some of the footage, you will find that you can track him throughout the entire night. There's only a small window where he's off the camera for 30 or 60 seconds. And during that time, that's when he's beat to a bloody pulp, apparently, where he's supposed to have broken some ribs and all these different things. The problem is he doesn't have any broken ribs. He kind of leisurely walks out from the area where these guys had gone after him, and he does have the noose around it's not really a noose, but it's this thing around his neck, and he's carrying a Subway sandwich. That's the part that made me, I was just like, what? So you're getting beat up and you drop your Subway sandwich. First off, I would think that during the beating, the Subway sandwich would probably have been destroyed beyond recognition, right? You wouldn't be able to pick that bad boy up and head your way back to the house and consume it as usual. Not to mention, you probably would not want to. Okay, you'd probably be so shaken up that you'd limp your way to the closest phone and you'd make a call for help. The difference is he went in, walks past his doorman up to his floor, and 40 minutes later he makes a call to the cops. Now, again, as I mentioned, if that had happened to you, you would call the cops immediately, and you would want to get some medical attention. This is not what he did, and that's why the entire thing seems fishy. And then when the people asked for his phone, because he said he was talking to his producer or his manager or agent, I believe it was actually, when the whole thing happened, they were hoping they'd be able to identify it. Turns out the people, they actually subpoenaed the records, because he eventually handed over his phone after a little bit of pressure, and turns out they were able to locate the people that had done it, and they are friends of Mr. Jesse here. And the rumor is not confirmed, but this makes a lot more sense to me now if this is true. But over the last 2 weeks, this is where we have landed, is that he was possibly going to be written out of the show. And perhaps this is where the motive is actually being generated. And of course, ABC, I can't even remember I think it actually may be ABC, but they said that he wasn't going to be written out of the show, probably just to deny liability of any sort. And so, but I mean, he's obviously gotten himself a lot of attention. He's developed people are starting to feel for him. They're very sympathetic towards him. So if he were to be written out of the show, they would feel it would be a big injustice to ABC if they were to do something like that. And of course, ABC is going to deny it. There's no way they're going to say the guy that just claimed he was beaten up is the one that was going to be written out of the show. So he knows the guys that allegedly beat him up, and so nothing is falling into place. His story's changed multiple times, and the first mainstream media that has actually said something about it was ABC Chicago, his city. They said that basically there's nothing to see here. Nothing really happened. As far as they can tell, he made it up. And he was upset that people were saying something like that, and saying that people should be believed if they say this, but that doesn't work. People cry wolf every single day, multiple times a day, and if you believe everyone that says that, you're a fool. You have to look at the logical outlay of the land, and if something bad happened, there will be evidence of it. Now, there are rare cases where that isn't the case, and in those cases, if you can't find evidence, then maybe that's one of the times you give the benefit of the doubt. But that's after trying to find that evidence. You don't believe them immediately, especially in today's world. We have all these people that are doing these different things for various reasons. So, anyways, that's the news for the week, and we love to deliver it to you each week, because we know that if you listen to it day after day, it's going to drive you crazy. So we do that for you, and we make sure that those stories develop sufficiently enough before we come in and start talking about it. So this is Matt Field with Ditch Your Political Party Podcast, and we will see you next week. But subscribe and tell your friends. All right, we'll see you later.